Hi students, welcome back. So today we are going to discuss a famous movement in our freedom struggle, that is non-cooperation movement. Okay, so I think we can start off with the non-cooperation movement now. So first we are going to discuss about the launch. So what basically what the we are just discussing about the non-cooperation movement. So what all things come under the launch of non-cooperation movement? Okay. So we're just going through the points first. Mahatma Gandhi was a leader of non-cooperation movement. He came upon with the Indian people. He called upon basically of the Indian people to reject the British rule and withdraw their cooperation from the British government and institutions. Okay. So basically Mahatma Gandhi was the leader of this non-cooperation movement, and basically he had urged Indian people to reject the British rule and withdraw the cooperation from the British government and institutions. Okay, so basically he had called upon the people to do and try to reject the British government and their cooperation as well. Okay, now people were urged to boycott the British goods and instead support Indian made products. Okay, now this step aimed to weaken the economic power of the British and promote Indian industries. Okay, Indians were encouraged to surrender their titles and honors given by the British government. Okay, this was a symbol of rejecting their authority and assertion and asserting their national pride. Okay, so basically people were urged, they were urged to boycott the British goods and try and support the Indian products. Okay, so basically the aim was to weaken or make an impact in the economy of the British government and try to boost our products as well. And also the Indian or this basic movement had also told the people to surrender the titles which was given by the British government to and by rejecting this sort of titles and things, the main aim was to reject their sort of an authority and assertion and asserting the national pride. Okay, so they were the backdrop of that was basically was, it was a symbol of rejecting sort of the appreciation and showing their national pride as well. Okay, so that was their aim for surrender or aim behind the surrendering of titles as well. Okay. Now, people also were asked to peacefully protest, okay, and refuse to follow the British laws and regulations. This included non-payment of taxes, okay, and non-participation in the British run institutions, and large-scale public demonstrations marked the launch of the non-cooperation movement. Okay, now people were basically peacefully asked to protest as well and refuse the laws, refuse to allow follow the British laws and regulations, and this also included the basic steps were non-payment of taxes. They were told to not pay the taxes and not participate in the British institutions as well, and also large-scale public demonstration also marked the start of this non-cooperation movement. Okay, so by this way they basically started the non-cooperation movement. Okay, now moving on, what were the causes of non-cooperation movement? Okay, what was the which led to non-cooperation movement? That is what we are going to discuss next. If we are just going through the points, the major reasons were first and foremost, the reason was Jallianwala Bagh. Okay, as we know, it was a brutal sort of a massacre at Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar, which took place in 1990. Okay, the British troops killed hundreds of unarmed Indians, and this incident served as a catalyst for the non-cooperation movement. Okay, so as we know, this was a brutal sort of an act by the British government because they had killed hundreds of people who were unarmed in Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar. Okay, so as we know, if you just have visited that place, I think most of you might, or you might have seen the pictures of that areas as well. That till now we can just see the sort of a bullet stripes in the walls. Okay, so that was basically a brutal act by the British government, and that was basically a pivotal reason as well for India to start the non-cooperation movement. Okay, Now the next sort of an act that also led to non-cooperation movement was the Rowlatt Act. Okay, so Rowlatt Act basically was enacted in 1919. So it granted the British government sweeping powers to suppress the political dissent and curtail the civil liberties. Okay, liberties basically. This repressive law also allowed for indefinite detention without trial. Okay, so that was also a point. This also caused a widespread outrage among Indians and fueled the call for non-cooperation. Okay, so basically what they were doing was they were not allowing they were arresting people without detention. Okay, and it was for an indefinite period. Okay, so basically if the leaders were jailed, they were not produced to the court and they were indefinitely jailed. So these sort of things also ignited the non-cooperation movement. Okay, so that was an act which was been passed by the during the Rowlatt Act. Okay, now the other thing was the Khilafat movement as well. The Khilafat movement was initiated by the Indian Muslims, as we know. So it aimed to protect the caliphate in Turkey after its disintegration following the World War I. Okay. Now the movement also gained support from from Mahatma Gandhi and other Indian leaders, and they saw it as an opportunity to unite the Hindus and Muslims in the struggle against British rule. Okay, the Khilafat movement, as we know, you might have read in our books, on the history books as well. It was initiated by the Indian Muslims. Okay, the reason was that they were trying to protect the capitolate in Turkey after the First World War. Okay, so that was the reason why the Indian Muslims started this Khilafat movement, and the Indian political leaders at that point of time and Mahatma Gandhi also supported this issue, and they looked at as an opportunity to unite the Hindus and Muslims. So which was a difficult task at that point of time. So this Khilafat movement also sort of made sure that this non-cooperation movement became a success at that point of time. Okay. Now moving on, economic exploitation as well. That was also a reason. So that because India faced an economic exploitation under the British rule with high taxes and unfair trade policies. Okay, these economic grievances created a sense of discontent and restatement among the Indian population. Okay, so basically the economic exploitation was under the British rule was that they had given because the taxes were basically high, and the trade policies were not also fair for the Indian businessmen at that point of time. So the exploitation was huge. Okay, and this basically made sure that the economic conditions of the businessmen and the people of India at that point of time was not good as well. So that also led to this non-cooperation movement, as we can see. Okay. The other point, as we can see, is desire for Swaraj. Okay, Swaraj, as we know, is sort of their agenda was complete independence, to get complete independence. So the non-cooperation movement was driven by the Indian people's strong desire for Swaraj. Okay, this was inspired by the principles of non-violence. Okay, and civil disobedience advocated by Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, so Gandhiji believed that non-cooperation with British authorities would eventually lead to independence. Okay, so basically this desire for Swaraj was there in the mind of every Indian, and Mahatma Gandhi, in the sense, the principles behind the Swaraj basically was non-violence and civil disobedience, because Gandhiji thought that these two will at the end make sure that India gets independence from the British rule. Okay, so that was basically the causes of non-cooperation movement. Okay, now moving on, what was the role of Mahatma Gandhi in non-cooperation movement? Okay, so because as we had seen in the start that Mahatma Gandhi's role was very pivotal because he was leading this non-cooperation movement. Now, if we are just looking through what are the roles of Mahatma Gandhi, that we can just discuss now. So Mahatma Gandhi was a key figure basically in spreading the non-cooperation movement, policies and initiatives across the country. Okay, So he was a key feature in spreading the non-cooperation movement's policies. So basically, what they were looking from this non-cooperation movement. So okay, so the policies and initiatives across the country were spread by Mahatma Gandhi. So that was an important thing that he did at that point of time. Then he and his other loyalties went on a national wide tour to rally public support and mobilize the masses in support of the campaign. Okay, so he and his other loyalties, that means other party members or the other allies as well. So they went for a nationwide tour as well to try to gather a public support and also make sure that people know about this movement and try to gain their support as well. Okay, so that is also a thing that Mahatma Gandhi did to try to make this movement a success. Okay, and several pupils quit their schools when Mahatma Gandhi pursued them to leave the state institutions and join the national schools. Okay, so Mahatma Gandhi also made sure that the students who were studying in the British sort of institutions to quit that institution and try and join the Indian schools. Okay, so that in that aspect as well, Gandhiji played an important role. Okay, now moving on to the next point. Now, without questions, the non-cooperation cause and Mahatma Gandhi's role in it capitulated the India's independence movement to unprecedented heights. It instilled in the people a new political zeal and taught the Indians to be fearless. Okay, so this non-cooperation movement, as we know, it was a pivotal, it played a pivotal role basically in India's independence, and also this also made sure that people became a bit more fearless, because before this, Indian people at that point of time were suppressed by this British rule, and they were able to try. This movement basically made sure that people had become a bit more fearless against the British rule, and that also played an important role for our independence in 1947. Okay. Now moving on to the next point, Swaraj found a popular expression under Mahatma Gandhi's leadership, and patriotic zeal captivated the entire nation. Okay, so this sort of Swaraj, which was an idea of Mahatma Gandhi as well, made sure that this sort of Swaraj was basically spread to across the country, and everyone in the country was trying to was in favor of India getting a Swaraj. So by that way as well, that sort of a motto of Swaraj made sure that people united at that point of time in India. Okay. Now moving on, Gandhiji's gift to the nation, that is Satyagraha, or the passive resistance, turned out to be India's greatest asset. Okay. So Gandhiji's as basically his gift to India basically was this non-violence sort of a method, and passive resistance. So that also basically gained support, and people were trying to use this sort of method for getting the independence, or this also played a pivotal role in our India's independence as well. Okay, the promotion of Khadi was a fundamental program of the non-cooperation movement. Okay, so that means, as we just discussed prior to this, because this movement basically urged people to boycott British goods and support Indian goods. So Khadi was basically portrayed as an important sort of a thing at that point of time, and the promotion of Khadi was also a fundamental program in the non-cooperation movement. Okay, the charkha and Indian loom products regained their glory under Gandhiji's leadership. A large number of weavers were employed. Okay, this charkha and Indian loom products, so that also gained a good popularity during that time, and the weavers, Indian weavers at that point of time, also were employed, and people started to buy Indian products. So that made our products, or the people behind these their industries as well, employed. Okay, that was also a thing which Gandhiji did. Now moving on, Gandhiji's contribution to this campaign and substantially to the Indian nationalism was that he united the entire country under a common ethos for the first time. Okay, so as we know, India was not sort of a unite. It was very difficult for leaders to try and unite India. But with this movement, Gandhiji was able to achieve that goal of uniting India as a whole, okay, under a common cause. So that was an important thing which Gandhiji did during this movement. Okay. Now, under his exceptional leadership, the liberation struggle took to a pan-India character. Okay. Now, basically, prior to this, all the movements were not able to be spread throughout the country. But during this method or during this movement, as Gandhiji was a political figure, as we say, he was a pan-India character at that point of time. So he basically most of the Indians were able to know about Gandhiji, and his sort of a, as we say, his sort of this movement made sure that every Indian was under one umbrella, and his sort of a pan-India character made sure that the movements which he carried out had got a mass appreciation by the people of India. Okay, so that was also an important. So these are basically the role of Gandhiji in the non-cooperation movement. Okay, now moving on, what are the importance of non-cooperation movement? Okay, what importance did non-cooperation movement have on our Indian struggle or the India's independence struggle? The importance was some of the points which we are just going to discuss. So the first point is that movement saw widespread participation from all sections of the society, which included peasants, workers, students, and women. It also brought people together in a united front against the British rule. Okay, so basically, people from most parts of our society had come to support this non-cooperation movement, particularly the workers, students, as well, women. Okay, basically, because if we see prior to this movement, only a small sort of a mass people had supported the other movements, but this movement was attracted by most of the people. So that also gained good support there, and also it made sure that people were uniform, as we discussed before this prior thing. That unity was a big thing in this movement as well. Okay. Now moving on, the other point is that the movement promoted the idea of non-violent resistance and civil disobedience. Okay, it encouraged people to boycott the British institutions, including the school, colleges, and law courts. This non-cooperation weakened the British administration and challenged their authority. Okay, the movement of this basic idea, the key was non-violence. Okay, not using violence method. So non-violence and civil disobedience. So trying to boycott the British colleges, schools, and their law courts as well. So this non-cooperation weakened their administration as well, because the British administration weakened by this, and also it challenged their authority. So because if people are quitting their schools, institutions, and as well, that would financially and economically weaken them, and their authorities had also faced this challenge as well because of this movement. Okay. Now moving on, the movement also awakened the sense of national conscience and pride among the Indian masses. Okay, it also instilled the spirit of unity, self-reliance, and self-confidence. It fostered a collective identity among Indians. Okay, so basically, this movement also gave people a sense of national coincidence, or a sort of a matter of pride to try and join this sort of a mass or this movement, and also it inspired a sense of unity. It gave people a sort of a self-confidence and self-reliance, that because people were able to try to connect it and try to make this issue a national issue, and it made sure that people are sort of had got an sort of a pride in going to this movement. Okay, so that also tried and clicked in this non-cooperation movement. Okay, and also collective identity, because people were able to join in groups, people were coming in groups and trying to make this movement a success. So by that way as well, this movement had gained a positive impact. Okay, now moving on, this non-cooperation movement expanded the nationalist agenda beyond the elite circles and brought it to the masses. Okay, it provided a platform for the common people to actively take part in the freedom struggle. Okay, the non-cooperation movement also as well, because prior to this movement, prior to this, the movements were basically restricted to a circle, but because of this non-cooperation movement, this this movement was able to spread across the country. So that was an advantage or an important positive of non-cooperation movement. And also it made sure that common people were able to also join the this freedom struggle, because prior to this some leaders were doing some sort of a movement and all, but the common people were not able to try and engage in these sort of movements. But during the non-cooperation movement, people were able to, as we say, people were able to give their hand as well, a little hand as well, for the freedom of the country. So by that way as well, people were also engaged, and they also sort of had a belief that the thing that they are doing is making this movement a success, and trying and making India or our country get near our goal, which was the complete independence. Okay. Now moving on, Mahatma Gandhi emerged as a prominent figure in the India's independence movement. His principle of non-violence and satyagraha became the powerful tools for achieving the freedom. So Mahatma Gandhi, as we know, his principles of non-violence and satyagraha were the important tools. So that sort of a tool became an important thing when we now see our independence struggle. So these two were the sort of a pivotal principles of Mahatma Gandhi, and that were adopted by the people of the country as well. Okay. Now moving on, the non-cooperation movement gathered international attention and sympathy for India's struggle for independence. It exposed the oppressive nature of British colonial rule. It also helped in gaining support from other nations. Okay, so all these movements had basically a positive impact internationally as well, because people were able to know what all the Indian people are facing under this British colonial rule, and that sort of a sympathy and sort of an oppression against the British colonial rule also uh, sort of a sort of which was made because of this non-cooperation movement, and also helped in gaining the support from other nations as well, because the other nations as well supported the Indian freedom struggle, and that made life difficult for the British rule at that point of time. Okay. Yeah. Now, why this non-cooperation movement was withdrawn? So that was also a reason, as we know, that after a point of time, this non-cooperation movement was withdrawn. The basic reason was the Chauri Chaura event. Okay, in that basically, Gandhiji had ordered a halt to the movement in the February 1922 in Chauri Chaura, which is in Uttar Pradesh. A violent mob set fire to a police station, killing 22 officers during a clash between the police and the movement protesters. Gandhiji called the movement off, claiming that the people were not ready for the ahimsa based incursion against the government. Okay. Several leaders, including Motilal Nehru, C.R. Das, were opposed to the movement suspension owing to a specific acts of violence. Okay. So as we know, the Chauri Chaura event was the sort of a thing that led to the withdrawal of non-cooperation movement. In that, basically 22 officers, police officers were killed during that sort of a non-violent act, violent act, and that basically led to Gandhiji calling off this movement, because his principles were always non-violence, and non-violence was his basic principle. So this was basically against that. So that basically ended this non-cooperation movement. Okay, so if we just looking through the points, if we just discussing the non-cooperation movement, as we say, the advantages were more, but this sort of a withdrawal, as we say, the reason was because of this Chauri Chaura event which took place in Uttar Pradesh, that led to the withdrawal of non-cooperation movement. Okay, so I hope that you got an idea regarding this non-cooperation movement. Um, so now we are what we are going to do. What all questions could be asked from this non-cooperation movement? Okay, so the year you have to just remember the year in which non-cooperation movement started was 1922. That could be asked. Then who was the leader? Who was leading this non-cooperation movement? That could be asked. So as you know, that is Mahatma Gandhi. He was leading this non-cooperation movement. And then what all principles and what all were done in non-cooperation movement, that could be asked. So as we just discussed this in the session, that the British goods were sort of opposed or banned. People were boycotting the British products. Then students had left the British schools, colleges, and their law courts as well. So all in all, the British uh, basically the economy, the two things which this non-cooperation movement was trying to gain was tried to weaken the British colonial rule by impacting their economic side and their economic side and as well as the institutional side. Okay, that is, they were not able to get that sort of an attention from the people because people were oppressing their rules and regulations. So that was an important. Their institutions were attacked in the sense people were boycotting their institutions. So that was also an important thing. And then their products were boycotted. So that also led to their economic sort of a drawback. So that is basically the thing or the aim of non-cooperation movement. Now the positives also would be asked. What were the positives from non-cooperation movements? The positives, as we had discussed, the main positive was the unity of the country. People of the country were united, and the common people were able to sort of participate in this non-cooperation movement because, as we said, prior to the other movements, only a small sort of a circle was been attracted to the movements, but these sort of movements made sure that people on a whole, on a mass, were attracted, and internationally as well, people were able to know about India's freedom struggle, and they also had opposed the British rule in India. So all in all, these are the positives that came out from non-cooperation movement. The other positives which we can say is that people had united. That is an important thing. Then people were able to sort of a connect because the unity among the members of the country was ignited because of this movement. Okay, and as we said, the women, children, that means all faces or all people from across the society were able to join this sort of a movement. So that was missing in the prior movements as well. So that was also a thing, if we say about the positive aspect of non-cooperation movement. Okay, the drawback, as we said, drawback was the Chauri Chaura incident that eventually led to the drawback of or the calling off of non-cooperation. Okay, so I hope that you got an idea of this non-cooperation movement. So we are ending the session for today. Thank you very much.